Xylaris Station floated like a shining metal island in the middle of deep space, a place where hundreds of alien species came every day to buy, sell, trade, and sometimes simply watch the strange life moving around them. It was known for loud markets, bright signs, and endless noise machines humming, engines roaring, and merchants calling out prices in more than 50 languages. Most humans found it overwhelming, but Commander Elias Ward had grown used to the chaos long ago. He walked across the main plaza with steady steps, his worn boots tapping softly on the smooth floor. Elias was a soldier, and nothing about his appearance hid that fact. He had a tall frame, a strong build, and a face that showed the sharp lines of someone who had survived too many battles. His dark hair was cut short, and a long scar crossed his chin, a reminder of a fight he did not like to talk about. He had come to Xylaris Station simply to wait for transport home. His mission was done, and paperwork would take another day. That meant he had time to wander. He told himself he was only exploring, but honestly, he was trying to distract his mind. War left quiet spaces in his thoughts, and he did not enjoy those spaces. As he walked, he heard a loud voice echoing from a nearby hall. Auction begins in 10 minutes. Rare species on display. Elias almost kept walking. Auctions on alien stations were usually unpleasant. People sold machines, exotic items, and occasionally living creatures. He disliked the last category, but curiosity tugged at him just for a brief look, he told himself. He stepped inside the auction hall. The room was large, filled with bright lights, and a circular stage in the center. Rows of seats formed a half-moon around the platform, and aliens of all shapes and sizes sat waiting. Some had glowing skin, some had long antennae, and some wore breathing masks to handle the mixed air. A faint buzz of conversation swept across the room. Elias took a seat in the back, far from the bidding crowd. He had no intention of buying anything. He simply wanted to observe. The auctioneer, a tall insect-like being with shimmering wings, tapped its metal podium. "Ladies, gentlemen, and all honored beings, today we present a rare opportunity." The crowd murmured with interest. Elias leaned back, his arms crossed, watching silently. The auctioneer continued. "Our first item, an energy crystal from the rings of Cathion." The crowd cheered. Bidding began immediately. Elias paid little attention. Expensive crystals, rare metals, unusual minerals, nothing new, but everything changed when the auctioneer's tone shifted. "Now, our highlight presentation. An extremely rare and highly valued creature. In fact, a set of 6. Elias frowned. Living beings again. He felt tension rise in his chest. 2 guards pushed a large containment gate onto the stage. Inside, behind a clear energy barrier, was something that silenced every conversation in the hall. A dragon. Not a mythical creature from old Earth stories, but a real alien species, known across the galaxy for their beauty, strength, and intelligence. Her scales shimmered in shades of silver and violet, glowing softly under the stage lights. She had large wings folded tightly against her sides, and her long tail curled protectively around a cluster of small shapes. The shapes moved. 5 hatchlings, tiny dragons, no larger than house pets, each one shaking with fear. Their eyes glowed faintly, adjusting to the bright lights. The mother dragon lowered her head over them, blocking the crowd with her body. A soft gasp spread across the hall. Elias sat upright. His heart gave a small, sharp twist. The auctioneer raised its voice. "Behold, the last known survivors of the Dravari species. Their homeworld was destroyed last cycle, and these 6 were found in a damaged transport vessel. This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance for collectors and researchers alike." The mother dragon let out a low rumbling sound. Fear, warning, or exhaustion. Elias couldn't be sure, but he recognized the instinct in her posture. Protection. Fierce, desperate protection. He had seen it before on battlefields, in refugees, in soldiers trying to shield their wounded comrades. The emotion was familiar. The bidding began instantly. 10,000 credits. 20. 30. The crowd's excitement grew. Some aliens leaned forward, whispering about genetic research. Others imagined training a dragon. Some simply saw value. Elias felt his jaw tighten. He understood why dragons were rare. He understood why they were considered powerful. But he also understood something the others did not seem to see. The mother dragon was injured. One of her wings had a deep tear. Her side was covered in faint scorch marks. Her breathing was uneven. And she stood between the crowd and her children. Despite her condition, she must have fought hard before someone captured her. Elias did not know what made him speak. He was not the kind of man to act without thinking. But something inside him, something silent and old, moved him before his logic could interfere. 50,000. The hall went quiet. Heads turned. Dozens of eyes focused on the human soldier sitting alone in the back row. The auctioneer blinked in surprise. "We have 50,000 credits from the human. Do we have 60? A wealthy merchant raised a hand. 65. Another bidder lifted a glowing card. 70. Elias exhaled slowly. He had money saved from years of service, never used, never needed. He had told himself it was for retirement. Maybe a small home, but as he watched the mother dragon tremble over her young, something in him settled. He lifted his hand again. 100,000. Gasps filled the hall. The auctioneer twitched its wings in shock. Even the mother dragon stopped moving for a moment, her bright eyes turning toward him. No one spoke. Finally, the auctioneer cleared its throat. 100,000 credits. Going once. Going twice. A long pause stretched across the room. Sold to the human commander. A sharp sound rang as the auctioneer struck the podium. Elias stood up slowly. He felt dozens of stares follow him, but he ignored them. His focus remained on the dragon family. As he approached the stage, security guards looked uneasy. One whispered, "Commander, are you sure you can handle them?" Elias gave a small nod. "I'm not planning to handle them. I'm planning to help them." The energy barrier lowered. The mother dragon tensed, lowering her head as if ready to fight again. Elias stopped a respectful distance away. He kept his hands open, showing he carried no weapons aimed at her. He spoke softly, knowing she might not understand the words, but hoping she sensed the meaning. "I'm taking you somewhere safe. I won't harm you. You're free from the auction now." Her glowing violet eyes watched him carefully. He held her gaze without flinching. For a long moment, the entire hall was silent. Then the dragon slowly lifted her head. She nudged one hatchling closer to her side and gave Elias a low, soft sound, not a threat, but a cautious acknowledgement. The guards stepped back. Elias walked beside the family as they were escorted out of the hall. The hatchlings whimpered softly, stumbling as they tried to keep up. The mother dragon guided them forward with gentle nudges. When they reached the hallway outside, Elias felt the shift in the air. Inside the auction hall, the family had been items for sale. Out here, they were beings who deserved safety. He tapped his wristband to complete the transaction. A guard nodded respectfully, though confusion filled his expression. "You're responsible for them now," the guard said. "This is a rare species. Many eyes will be watching you." "I know," Elias replied. As he walked toward his assigned quarters, he glanced back. The mother dragon watched him with cautious curiosity. The hatchlings followed closely, tiny wings dragging on the ground. Elias realized he had no idea what he was doing, but he knew he couldn't walk away. Not from them. Not now. The auction hall faded behind him, but the weight of the moment stayed. The soldier had bought a dragon family, and the galaxy had just begun to whisper about the human who did the impossible. Commander Elias Ward walked slowly through the long steel corridors of Xylaris Station, guiding the dragon mother and her 5 hatchlings toward the living quarters the military had assigned him. He kept his pace steady and calm so the dragons would not be frightened. The hatchlings stayed close to their mother's legs, making soft, nervous chirping sounds as they looked around the strange new environment. The mother dragon, Sereth, as Elias would later name her, moved with careful strength. Even injured, her presence felt powerful. Her wings dragged slightly, showing exhaustion, but she kept her neck lifted with quiet dignity. Every few steps, she glanced at Elias. It was not trust yet, but it was no longer pure fear either. Elias reached his door and tapped the access panel. The door slid open, revealing a small but clean room. A simple bed, a desk, a table, and a wide open space in the center. The open space was the only reason he thought the dragons might fit inside. "It's not much," Elias said softly, "but it's safe." The dragons did not understand his words, but they understood his tone. Sereth stepped inside first, testing the floor, then motioned with her tail for the hatchlings to follow. They entered slowly, sniffing the air and exploring with tiny claws tapping on the metal surface. Elias stayed near the door, letting them adjust. He knew better than to rush toward frightened animals, especially intelligent ones. Instead, he walked to the storage unit and began preparing food and medical supplies. He set a large bowl of purified water in the corner and placed 2 crates of soft, nutrient-rich rations beside it. The hatchlings' eyes lit up at the smell, but they didn't approach yet. They waited for their mother's signal. Sereth studied Elias quietly. Her gaze was sharp, almost too intelligent for a creature sold at auction. Finally, with a gentle rumble from her throat, she nudged the nearest hatchling toward the food. Instantly, all 5 scrambled toward the crates. Elias couldn't help the small smile that formed on his face. The hatchlings tore into the soft rations with clumsy enthusiasm, getting bits of food stuck on their scales. One even tumbled sideways into the water bowl, sending droplets flying everywhere. Sereth huffed, a sound that almost seemed like a tired laugh. Elias sat on the floor across the room, giving them space. "Eat as much as you need," he said quietly. "You're safe now." For a moment, everything was peaceful, the sound of hatchlings chirping, eating, exploring. But when Elias pulled out a medical scanner, Sereth suddenly shifted. Her wings unfurled slightly, and her tail curled protectively around her young. "I'm not going to hurt you," Elias said. He kept the scanner low, his movements slow. "You're injured. Let me check, that's all." Sereth watched him with narrow eyes. She did not step back, but she also did not attack. Elias took this as a cautious permission. He approached her slowly, scanning the torn wing. The device beeped soft readings, fractures, burned tissue, and signs of long travel without rest or proper care. "You've been through a lot," he whispered. Sereth lowered her head closer, studying him. He reached into his field kit and pulled out a small container of regeneration gel, something safe for dozens of species. Without touching her, he opened the lid and held it where she could smell it. Her nostrils flared. No threat, no poison. Slowly, she relaxed. Elias stepped forward and gently applied the gel along the torn edge of her wing. She winced, but did not pull away. The gel shimmered softly, activating as it touched her scales. When he finished, he stepped back immediately to show respect. That should help the healing. To his surprise, Sereth dipped her head toward him, a slow, graceful movement. A gesture of acknowledgement, not trust. Not yet, but a beginning. Hours passed. The hatchlings grew tired from exploring and eventually settled together in a warm pile near their mother's tail. One had fallen asleep on top of another, who didn't seem to mind. Their tiny scales glittered like pieces of colored glass under the room's light. Elias cleaned up quietly and sat on the edge of his bed. His body was tired, but his mind refused to rest. He kept thinking about the look in Sereth's eyes at the auction, the fear, the strength, the exhaustion. He wondered how many battles she had fought to keep her babies alive, and how many more she had expected to fight. "Maybe now," he said softly to himself. "You don't have to fight alone." Sereth lifted her head slightly as if she heard him. Her eyes glowed in the dim room, calm but alert. Elias leaned back, rubbing a hand over his face. Buying them had been impulsive, reckless, even. Every military officer on the station would question his decision. Some would say dragons were dangerous, others would say he was irresponsible. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was that a whole species' 6 lives depended on him. The next morning, the station alarms chirped softly to announce a new cycle. Elias woke with a stiff back and groaned quietly. He glanced toward the corner where the dragon family slept. All 5 hatchlings were sprawled on top of their mother like lazy kittens. One was lying sideways across her nose. Another was hanging off her tail, Sarith herself was awake but not moving, as though she didn't want to disturb them. Elias smiled gently. It was the calmest scene he had seen in months. He stood slowly so he wouldn't startle them. But the smallest hatchling one, with bright blue eyes, noticed him and toddled toward him with unsteady steps. It tripped halfway, caught itself, then continued walking until it reached his boot. Elias froze. Sarith didn't react aggressively. She watched carefully, her tail twitching once. But she allowed it. The tiny dragon sniffed his boot, climbed onto it, and looked up at him with a curious chirp. "Well," Elias whispered. "Good morning to you too," the hatchling chirped again. Louder this time. Elias slowly crouched, letting his hand hover above the ground. He did not try to pet it. He simply stayed still. The hatchling placed one tiny paw on his finger. Just a touch. Small, gentle, but enough to make Elias feel something warm in his chest. Sarith made a soft rumbling sound. Not a warning, more like encouragement. The other hatchlings soon noticed their siblings' bravery and rushed forward in a chaotic group. Within seconds, Elias found himself surrounded by 6 curious beings. 5 tiny dragons, and their watchful mother. The hatchlings sniffed his clothes, pawed at his boots, and chirped excitedly. One tried to climb his leg but slid down again. Elias laughed quietly, careful not to make sudden movements. "You're all braver today," he said softly. Sarith stepped closer. She lowered her head until she was eye level with him. Elias swallowed, meeting her gaze. She studied him for a long moment, then gave a slow blink, a sign of peace, a sign of acceptance. Elias exhaled gently. "Thank you." Later that day, a message arrived on his wristband. "Report to HQ. Urgent." Elias sighed. Of course they want to talk. He looked at the dragons. Sarith lifted her head as if she understood something was happening. "I'll be back soon," Elias told her. "Stay inside. It's safe here." He walked to the door but stopped when he heard a soft, distressed chirp. The smallest hatchling followed him, stumbling awkwardly. Elias crouched and gently motioned for it to return to Sarith. "I won't be long." "You'll be okay." The hatchling tilted its head, confused but slowly obeyed. It crawled back to its siblings and curled beside them. Elias stepped out quietly. As the door closed, Sarith watched it, with a protective gaze, her wings half spread around her children. The walk to military headquarters was long. Officers stared as Elias passed. Word had already spread. The Humyn soldier bought a dragon family. Some whispered. Some looked shocked. Some looked concerned. But Elias ignored them. Inside, his commanding officer waited with a serious expression. "Commander Ward, care to explain why you purchased a highly rare and potentially dangerous species?" Elias stood tall. They were being sold like objects. They needed help. "This is not a simple matter," the officer said. "The station, the council, the media, everyone is talking. You have taken on a very large responsibility." "I know," Elias replied, "and I accept it." After a long silence, the officer sighed. "Then you must also accept the consequences, legal, political, and personal." "I will." "Very well," the officer said. "For now, the dragons stay under your care. But the council wants to observe them." "Be careful, Commander." Elias nodded. He left the office with a heavy but determined heart. He didn't know what challenges were coming. He didn't know how difficult this new responsibility would be. But as he walked back toward his quarters, he thought about the tiny paw on his finger. The soft chirps. The silent trust building day by day. For the first time in a long time, Elias felt he had something worth fighting for. Not as a soldier, but as a protector. As he reached his door and it slid open, 5 hatchlings rushed toward him, chirping loudly. Sarith lifted her head and gave a soft rumble of welcome. Elias smiled. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The next few days on Xylaris Station passed in a strange but peaceful rhythm inside Commander Elias Ward's small living quarters. The dragon family adjusted slowly to their new environment, and Elias learned something new about them every day. Their personalities, their behaviors, their sounds, all of it became part of his growing routine. The hatchlings were lively bundles of energy. They woke up at early cycle hours, chirping at everything, chasing each other around the room, knocking over anything not tied down, and then collapsing in a sleepy pile beside their mother. Sarith watched them with gentle patience, though her tired eyes showed she had not rested properly in a long time. Elias adapted to the chaos surprisingly well. After years of military structure and strict order, the unpredictable nature of the hatchlings felt refreshing. Strange but refreshing. Every morning, Elias brought fresh water and nutrient packs. Every evening, he checked Sarith's injuries, applying regeneration gel and scanning her progress. Her wing was healing faster than expected. Her eyes, once sharp with fear, now softened whenever he approached. But the hatchlings were the biggest change. They followed him everywhere. If he walked across the room, they trotted behind him. If he sat on the floor, they climbed onto his boots and lap. If he tried to leave, they chirped loudly until he returned. Elias had never imagined he would become a guardian to dragons, yet somehow, it felt natural. On the fourth day, something new happened, something much bigger, something that none of them expected. It began with a simple morning routine. Elias sat on the floor, repairing a small heating unit that one of the hatchlings had knocked over the night before. Sarith rested nearby with her wings half open, letting her babies crawl around her. The smallest hatchling, the one with bright blue eyes, approached Elias first. She had become the bravest of the group. Elias had started calling her Vyrix in his mind, though he had not said it aloud yet. Vyrix sniffed Elias's hand, then climbed onto his lap and began playfully batting at the tools he held. Elias chuckled. "You're going to break this again if you keep that up," he said softly. Vyrix chirped happily and pressed her tiny head against his chest. The other hatchlings soon noticed and rushed over. Within seconds, Elias was surrounded again, a circle of small, curious creatures, examining his uniform, tools, and boots. Sarith watched, her expression calm, as if she approved of the interaction. Elias set the tool down and let them explore. One climbed up his arm, another laid across his knee like a lazy cat. Their scales were cool to the touch, and every few seconds they made soft humming noises that vibrated lightly through the air. "You're all getting comfortable, aren't you?" Elias said with a gentle smile. The hatchlings chirped in response. Then, suddenly, it happened. Vyrix climbed onto his shoulder, wrapped her tiny tail loosely around his neck for balance, and looked straight into his eyes. Her bright blue irises glowed softly. She opened her mouth and spoke a single word, a small, soft, unsure word but clear. "Dad?" Elias froze. Every muscle in his body went completely still. Had he heard that right? The room fell silent. Even the other hatchlings stopped moving. Sarith slowly lifted her head, her glowing eyes widening with surprise. She stared at Vyrix, then at Elias, as if she recognized something deeply important had just occurred. Vyrix blinked once, then repeated it, louder this time, with more confidence. "Dad." Elias felt the air leave his lungs. His heart thumped hard in his chest, and warmth rose into his face. He had been called many things in his life: commander, soldier, officer, but never this. He swallowed, unsure how to respond. You learned that word?" Vyrix chirped proudly and nuzzled his cheek. The other hatchlings, hearing the new sound, excitedly attempted to repeat it. "Da, da, da." Their pronunciations were clumsy, but joyful. Elias laughed, overwhelmed, as they climbed into his lap again, chirping the word in different tones. But Sarith's reaction was the most important. The mother dragon stood slowly and stepped toward Elias. Her wings spread slightly, not in threat, but in a careful, ceremonial posture. Her eyes glowed with a soft silver light, and she lowered her head until it was just inches from his. She let out a low, harmonious sound, not a growl, not a warning, but something ancient and meaningful, a sound that echoed with gratitude. Elias realized then, Vyrix had not simply mimicked a word. She had chosen it. She had chosen him. Hatchlings of her species used mimicry only for beings they trusted deeply, beings they accepted as family. Elias's breath shook as he whispered, I don't know what to say." Sereth gently nudged his shoulder. For the first time, she allowed her scales to touch him without hesitation. Her gesture was clear. She approved. Later that day, the news spread through the station. Someone nearby had overheard the faint sound through the not-too-thick walls. Rumors traveled fast. A dragon hatchling called a Humyn Dad. By the time Elias walked through the hall to pick up more supplies, dozens of aliens stared with wide eyes. Some whispered in disbelief. Some looked amazed. Others appeared confused. Dragons were known for their intelligence and emotional depth. If a hatchling chose someone as family, it was not a small matter. A group of engineers whispered loudly as Elias passed. "Did you hear? A human earned a dragon bonding call. Impossible. No species outside their own ever received that. Maybe humans really are as unusual as they say." Elias kept walking, trying his best to ignore the attention. He had never liked being stared at. And now, it felt like the whole station was watching him. Outside a shop, a tall reptilian merchant stepped forward and bowed lightly. "Commander Ward," he said, voice respectful. "The council wishes to observe the dragons soon. Their behavior toward you has become important." Elias nodded. I understand. And congratulations," the merchant added with a small smile. "Being called a parental title by another species is a rare honor." Elias didn't know what to say. He simply nodded again and continued walking. Back in his quarters, the hatchlings greeted him with the same excitement as always. They chirped, ran in circles, and pounced on his boots. But now, among their chirps, he heard one word over and over. "Dad, Dad, Dad." Virix climbed onto his shoulder again and rubbed her head against his neck. Elias gently held her with one hand. "You all really mean it, don't you?" he whispered. The hatchlings responded with a group chirp. Sereth watched from the corner with calm pride. In that moment, Elias realized something powerful. He had not saved the dragons at the auction. They had saved a part of him too, a part he didn't know still needed healing. He had lived so long as a soldier, losing pieces of himself to duty and conflict. But somehow, these small, warm, glowing creatures had filled the empty spaces with something new, something bright, something hopeful. Family. That evening, as Elias sat cross-legged on the floor repairing another object the hatchlings had knocked over, Sereth slowly approached him again. She lowered her head and made a soft sound, fuller and deeper than before. Elias looked up, quietly waiting. Her eyes held a message he couldn't fully understand, but her body language was clear. She trusted him, she accepted him, and she believed he cared for her children. Elias placed a hand gently on the floor between them. "I'll protect them," he said softly. "I promise." Sereth responded by touching her snout lightly to the ground near his hand, the closest thing to a bow her species ever gave. Outside, the station lights dimmed to signal night cycle. Inside, the dragons curled up together, warm and peaceful. Virix, as always, climbed onto Elias's lap one last time before sleeping. She looked up at him, blinked slowly, and whispered, "Dad." Elias felt his heart melt all over again. He wrapped a careful arm around her, supporting her small weight. "Good night," he whispered. "I'm right here." As the dragons slept, Elias gazed at them with quiet wonder. He had come to Xylaris Station alone, but now, somehow, he was no longer alone. Life inside Commander Elias Ward's quarters had settled into a warm, gentle routine. But outside those walls, Xylaris Station buzzed with growing noise. Every corridor, every conversation, every news screen carried the same headline. Human soldier, adopted by dragon hatchling, mother dragon showing trust toward human guardian. Human dragon bond shocks Galactic Council. Elias never wanted fame. He never even wanted attention. But now, the entire station, and soon the entire galaxy was watching. Inside his small room, however, everything felt peaceful. The hatchlings played together in a bright corner, chasing one another in small circles until they tripped over their own tails. Sereth rested nearby with her wings spread in a half-protective arc, her eyes soft as she watched her children. Virix, the smallest and boldest of the group, sat proudly on Elias's lap, humming a soft, happy sound. Elias stroked her tiny head gently. "You're becoming more confident every day," he said with a smile. "Dad," Virix chirped in reply, her voice clearer than ever. Each time she said it, Elias felt warmth rise inside him, a feeling he never thought he would experience again after his years in war. But peace, even in space, rarely lasted forever. Late that evening, a message flashed on Elias's wristband. He tapped it open. Urgent notice. Commander Ward, report to the Galactic Council chamber immediately. This concerns the dragons. Elias's stomach tightened. He looked toward Sareth. She lifted her head, sensing something was wrong. Her wings twitched, and she gently called to her hatchlings. They hurried to her side, climbing over her tail and pressing close. Elias knelt beside her. "I don't know what they want," he said softly, "but I'll do everything I can to protect you." Sareth gazed at him with steady eyes. She lowered her head slightly, a sign that she trusted him to return. That trust made the message feel even heavier. The Galactic Council chamber was enormous, circular, and full of members from dozens of species. The air carried a formal heaviness, like a place where important decisions shaped entire worlds. When Elias stepped inside, all eyes turned toward him. Some looked curious, some looked doubtful, some looked quietly impressed. Counselor Raylon, a tall being with shimmering scales, stood at the center. "Commander Ward," he began, "you have been caring for the last known survivors of the Dravari species. This is a matter of great responsibility." "I understand," Elias replied. "Reports claim you have formed a bond with the hatchlings," Raylon continued. "And that one has spoken to you in a parental title." Elias nodded once. "Yes, she did," the chamber murmured in surprise. Raylon's eyes narrowed slightly, not with hostility, but with deep interest. "Commander, do you understand what that means? Dragons do not use mimicry lightly. A bonding call is rare. It is an emotional choice. From a developing mind." "I know," Elias said quietly. "I didn't expect it. But I accept it." Another council member stepped forward, a four-armed scholar known across the galaxy for studying ancient species. "And the mother dragon? Does she show acceptance?" Elias thought of Sareth's soft gestures, her calm eyes, her protective posture shifting from fear to trust. "Yes," he said. "She accepts me." The hall fell into complete silence. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Counselor Raylon tapped his staff softly. "Then we must discuss your request." "My request?" Elias asked, confused. "You have not made it verbally," Raylon replied. "But you made it in action. You chose to take them. You chose to care for them. You chose to protect them." A deep breath filled the chamber. "The question is this: should the dragon family remain under human guardianship, or be taken into official custody?" Elias felt the weight of every heartbeat. He stood straight, shoulders tense but voice steady. "They don't need a cage. They don't need to be studied or controlled. They need safety. They need healing. They need family. And you believe you can give them that?" "Yes," Elias answered without hesitation. "I already have." There were murmurs across the room, some skeptical, some thoughtful. Counselor Raylon raised a hand, silencing the voices. "And if threats come? If someone tries to take them? Could you defend them?" Elias's eyes hardened. War had shaped him. Duty had forged him. But now, he fought for something deeper than command orders. "I will protect them with everything I have," he said, "because they are no longer just rare creatures. They are lives that trust me, and I won't break that trust." The chamber filled with quiet whispers. Finally, Raylon spoke again. "Very well. The council will make its decision soon. You are dismissed for now." Elias bowed slightly and turned to leave, though tension still gripped his chest. But trouble came before he even returned to his quarters. Halfway down the corridor, alarms blared across Xylaris Station. Bright red lights flashed overhead. Alert. Potential hostile group identified. All security personnel report immediately. Elias's heart dropped. He ran, His boots thundered across metal floors as he sprinted toward his room. Around him, confused civilians and soldiers moved quickly, trying to understand the warning. As Elias reached his door, he heard a deep, sharp roar from inside. Sereth. Without hesitation, he slammed his hand to the access panel. The door slid open. Inside, Sereth stood tall. Wings spread wide over her hatchlings. Her scales glowed with fierce light. A group of masked intruders had forced their way in, carrying containment devices. They turned when Elias entered. One pointed a device at Sereth. "Step aside. Humyn. The dragons belong to us now." Elias didn't speak. He moved. Years of training activated instantly. He disarmed the nearest intruder with a swift motion, then used the handle of the containment rod to knock another off balance. The hatchlings huddled under their mother's wings, their eyes wide with fear. Sereth lunged at a third intruder, her tail sweeping across the room with controlled force, pushing him back into the wall. Elias finished the fight quickly, disabling the remaining attackers and securing the room. Breathing hard, he turned to Sereth. "Are you all okay?" Sereth lowered her wings slowly. The hatchlings peeked out, trembling. Viewership ran to Elias immediately, chirping in distress. She pressed her head against his chest, shaking. Elias held her gently, whispering reassurance. "You're safe. I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you." Sereth watched the scene. Her glowing eyes filled not just with relief but with something stronger: respect, trust, unity. Security officers soon arrived, taking the intruders into custody. Elias explained everything calmly, though his anger simmered beneath the surface. Whoever these people were, they had not acted alone. Someone powerful wanted the dragons, and this would not be the last attempt. He looked toward Sereth and her children. He would protect them, always. Hours later, Elias stood again before the Galactic Council. But this time, something had changed. Counselor Raylon spoke firmly. "Commander Ward, we have reviewed the attack. It appears a rogue faction believes the dragons should be controlled or exploited." Elias's jaw tightened. "Then keep them away from my family." The word slipped out before he could stop it. "My family." The council reacted with quiet surprise. Raylon nodded slowly. "We have reached a decision. The dragons will not be taken into custody. They will remain under your protection, with full council support." Elias exhaled deeply, a breath he had been holding for days. "You will, however," Raylon continued, "be provided with resources, a secure habitat, and training to ensure their safety. The council recognizes the bond you share, and we acknowledge the right of the dragons to choose their guardians." Sereth stepped forward from behind Elias, her large form filling the chamber. The hatchlings followed, chirping softly. Viewership climbed onto Elias's shoulder and announced proudly, "Dad!" The entire council froze. Then Raylon smiled a gentle, respectful smile. It seems the decision was already made. By them. Later, back in his quarters, Elias sat on the floor with the hatchlings curled in his lap, Sereth resting comfortably nearby. The room felt warmer, safer, like home. Elias looked around at them, 5 sleeping babies, one strong mother, and a future he never expected. He spoke softly, hardly above a whisper. "We'll make a life together. A safe one. A real one." Sereth rumbled softly in agreement. The hatchlings murmured in their sleep. Viewership nudged closer to Elias's chest, whispering the word that had changed everything. "Dad." Elias smiled, feeling something peaceful settle inside him. He had come to the station as a soldier. Now he was something else. A guardian, a father figure, a bridge between species, and the beginning of a new story for humans and dragons alike.